A silent crisis begins in the world's hottest regions as temperatures cross thresholds the human body was never designed to survive. Families wake up in homes that feel like ovens, where the air is too thick and hot to breathe even before sunrise. Cities that once thrived with millions of people now resemble abandoned steel deserts, shimmering under relentless heat waves. Farmers watch their fields turn gray and brittle, realizing their land can no longer produce the crops that fed generations. And as food fails, water disappears and heat becomes lethal. 1 billion people begin the same journey north, driven not by hope, but by the instinct to stay alive. Chapter 1. The Collapse of the Hot Zone. 1. Rising heat turns homes into traps. Summer temperatures climb so high that stepping outside becomes a calculated risk rather than a daily routine. Communities adapt by shifting work to nighttime hours, yet even the night fails to offer relief as heat becomes constant. Cooling systems fail under the weight of entire cities desperately relying on air conditioners to survive. Families gather in the single coolest room in their house, trying to endure each hour without collapsing. The realization spreads quietly. These places can no longer support life the way they once did. 2. Water scarcity dismantles civilization. Rivers that sustained millions shrink into narrow, muddy channels cutting through cracked earth. Cities ration water to a few hours a day, forcing residents to store what little they can in plastic containers. Farmers watch rainfall become unpredictable, leaving fields dry and lifeless for entire seasons. Conflicts erupt between communities competing for the last functioning wells and reservoirs. With every passing year, more families abandon their land because there is simply no water left to keep them alive. 3. Agriculture fails across the equator. Crops that once flourished under stable climates now shrivel under relentless heat and drought. Harvests decline sharply, pushing food prices beyond what millions of families can afford. Livestock die from disease and dehydration, wiping out the savings of rural communities. Food imports rise, but global demand overwhelms supply, leaving poorer nations with empty shelves. People realize that staying means starving, and moving becomes the only path to survival. 4. Urban heat makes megacities unlivable. Megacities like Lagos, Karachi, and Dhaka face extreme heat that melts infrastructure and collapses power grids. Hospitals overflow with patients suffering from heat stroke, dehydration, and respiratory distress. Transportation networks fail as roads buckle and rail lines warp under scorching temperatures. Parents keep children indoors for weeks at a time, afraid of the dangers waiting outside. Residents begin leaving in waves, hoping northern regions will offer even a chance of safety. 5. Economies crumble under climate pressure. Businesses close because workers cannot operate in unbearable temperatures. Tourism vanishes, draining crucial income from nations once known for warm climates. Governments spend billions trying to cool cities, treat heat-related illness, and import food. National budgets collapse under the weight of climate disasters that happen too frequently to recover from. People who once lived comfortably now find themselves trapped in a downward spiral of poverty and desperation. Chapter 2. The Northward Pull. 1. The Arctic becomes Earth's new safe zone. Melting ice exposes land in the far north that becomes unexpectedly fertile and habitable. Countries like Canada, Russia, and the Nordic nations gain vast new areas suitable for settlement. Longer growing seasons transform northern regions into emerging food-producing zones. Cities once isolated by snow become gateways for new populations seeking cooler climates. The world's balance begins shifting toward latitudes once considered uninhabitable. 2. Northern cities become global destinations. Urban planners expand cities like Toronto, Helsinki, and Anchorage to house millions more people. New eco-cities rise in the tundra, powered by wind, geothermal energy, and melting rivers. Migrants arrive with skills, labor, and cultural diversity, pulling northern economies upward. Governments introduce climate visas to control the rapidly increasing demand for entry. A new era begins where cold is no longer a challenge, but an advantage for survival. 3. The North American migration reversal. The southern United States becomes increasingly unstable as extreme heat overwhelms infrastructure. Millions move toward the Great Lakes, New England, and the Pacific Northwest, searching for safe temperatures. Agriculture shifts northward as traditional farm belts collapse under unpredictable climate patterns. Small northern towns explode into booming megaregions within a single generation. The U.S. faces an internal population shift unlike anything in its history. 4. Europe's reinvention under climate pressure. Mediterranean nations become too hot for consistent agriculture and safe outdoor living. Scandinavia emerges as a new cultural and economic center with growing agricultural land. Millions arrive from Africa and the Middle East as their homelands face unbearable heat. Governments invest in massive housing, food infrastructure, and renewable energy systems to support new residents. Europe transforms into a continent defined by cooperation, adaptation, and unprecedented diversity. 5. Russia becomes the new frontier. Siberia warms rapidly, revealing freshwater lakes, fertile soil, and vast open land. Moscow establishes settlement zones, rail networks, and new cities across the warming north. Millions of climate migrants seek access, drawn by the promise of land and resources. Russia's geopolitical importance rises as it controls the largest share of Earth's new habitable territory. A region once defined by ice becomes one of the most valuable areas on the planet. Chapter 3. The World After the Migration. 1. Borders transform into lifelines. Nations enforce strict climate-based immigration rules as millions seek entry for survival. Border agencies face waves of desperate families fleeing places that can no longer sustain life. Debates emerge over who deserves access to safe regions and who must remain behind. International agreements attempt to distribute migrants fairly, but demand exceeds any system's capacity. Borders no longer symbolize separation. They symbolize access to life itself. 2. New economies rise. From the northward shift, infrastructure projects explode in northern countries as they race to house new populations. Renewable energy booms, powered by wind, geothermal systems, and long summer days. New trade routes form across warming Arctic seas, reshaping global commerce. Agriculture shifts toward cooler regions, creating entirely new food economies. The global center of power moves noticeably north, altering the world's political landscape. 3. Abandoned regions become climate ghost zones. Large parts of South Asia, Africa, and South America become too hot for sustained human settlement. Entire cities are left behind, slowly swallowed by sand, heat, and time. Former farmlands turn into dry plains where nothing grows, not even weeds. People who remain face life-threatening heat, scarce water, and failing infrastructure. These ghost zones serve as haunting reminders of what humanity lost. 4. Humanity redefines survival and identity. Cultures blend as millions resettle far from their ancestral homes. Families rebuild traditions in places their ancestors never imagined living. Languages merge, foods evolve, and new generations grow up without remembering the lands their parents fled. Identity transforms from one rooted in geography to one shaped by movement and resilience. The story of humanity becomes the story of adaptation. 5. The final reflection. By 2050, 1 billion people will have moved north, not as explorers, but as survivors of a planet transformed. Their journey marks the largest human migration in history, reshaping nations and redefining what it means to call a place home. The world they leave behind becomes a warning, and the world they build ahead becomes a second chance. Whether humanity thrives or falls depends on how well we learn from this migration. And in the end, the question is not why people moved, but whether the rest of the world was ready when they did. If you want to understand the world we're heading toward, subscribe and join us as we drift deeper into the future.